Welcome to the Sam and Joe VA Show, where we teach women just like you how to start and scale a thriving virtual assistant business.
We're your hosts, Sam and Joe, and get ready to have the control, flexibility, and freedom you've always dreamed of.
Welcome to episode 218, Perimenopause. It's not just midlife hot flushes. Now, Sam, this is going to be another very raw and potentially emotional topic as we talk about your perimenopause journey and take you back to 2 years ago when I feel like things were the most tough that they have ever been in your entire life. Are you ready for that? I've got my red lipstick on. We can talk about periods today. For anyone watching on YouTube, especially for you, Sam, to lighten the mood, because this is a tough topic we're going to talk about.
Yeah, this is an episode that we've been talking about recording for a couple of years now. But look, there's going to be things that we touch on, that I touch on in particular, that are uncomfortable to talk about. Like, I feel very comfortable talking to you, Joe, and my close friends and my close family, and of course Mark. But yeah, some of the things that that I'm going to share with you today, like, it's really vulnerable, just when you think that I hadn't been vulnerable enough in the podcast this year, we decide to record this episode. But it's really important as well. I think the whole topic of perimenopause, there is still, although it's talked about a lot more lately, which is a great thing, it's no longer this taboo subject that used to be years ago. And there is a lot of education out there, thank God. It's still not talked about enough. So if my journey and what I've learned over the past few years helps anybody else, then it is totally worth the box of tissues I'm probably going to go through in the next hour.
Because we're well aware that there is predominantly women in this industry, and this can really affect the way that you can show up in your business. And you need to be prepared and ready and to understand and to seek help if you need, so that you can make it through. There is so we're gonna do a trigger warning, and we're gonna also have a disclaimer. Like, the disclaimer is that we are not medical professionals. This is not medical advice. What we're doing is sharing Sam's story so that we have awareness in the industry, and you can go off and you can go and do some more research and go and talk to your own medical practitioners if this is something that you're experiencing. And to also get you aware of what's coming. If this has not happened to you yet, this may be coming for you. And the other warning we have is that we're going to talk about suicidal thoughts and depression. So please be aware of that. Please be in a safe space, have some support around you if you want to listen to this and that has been something that you've struggled with in your life.
Can I change my mind, Joe?
No, you cannot change your mind. We're doing this because it's really important, isn't it? It's so important that us as women know what's about to happen. And I'm so grateful. And I'm sorry that you had to go through it first, but I'm so grateful that I got to witness you and your journey so that I am fully prepared for when this happens to me, that I actually have the knowledge and can really advocate for myself when I go and actually seek medical help if I need it.
Yeah, it's so important. It's so important. And happy to take one for the team, Joe.
Okay, so take us back, Sam. In your life, your mum, your family members, did you know what perimenopause or even menopause was?
I didn't know what perimenopause was. I knew I thought I knew what menopause was, but a lot of those things that I thought I knew about it have been absolutely blown apart over the past couple of years. The first time I heard of it, I remember this absolutely vividly. I was probably about 11 or 12. I was an intermediate. And I remember my nana coming over to the house. She must have been looking after me and my younger brother. And we were standing in the kitchen, and I think I was being a typical going into puberty 11, 12-year-old girl, and I was probably being a real bitch to my mum. So my mum walked out, and Nana kind of like came over to me and just said, "Your mum is going through something called menopause, so you need to be really kind to her." But that was it. Like that was the extent of the conversation. So she didn't go into it anymore. You could tell that she didn't want to talk about it anymore. Like, I'm just giving you a heads up, but that's all the information I'm giving you. And mum never talked about it either. So all I knew was mum in her 40s, late 40s, I'd say, was going through this thing called menopause that I had no idea. We didn't have the internet to search things up either, I just want to say. And I don't think we had the encyclopedia that began with M. I think we only had the encyclopedias we're up to about, because they were super expensive. Do you remember that?
Yes, I remember that they come knocking on your door and sell them to you. Like, here, we want to buy some encyclopedias.
We only had up to like F. We didn't have M, so I couldn't look it up. But I bet you, even if we did have the encyclopedia M, I bet you there was nothing in there because it was such a taboo thing. Like anything around women's health, reproduction, anything around that was just like, oh, you don't talk about it. So that was my first kind of introduction. Mum needed kindness.
And that's it, just one sentence from your nana. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
And
was
like,
taboo. It's like periods and cycles and all that kind of stuff. It was like dirty or like,
yes.
just like taboo, don't talk about that. It's something that we like, do in private and we just suffer in silence.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do you even remember did you have a conversation about periods with your mum or auntie or anything? Or were you just like given a packet of tampons and left to it, right?
I remember it vividly as well. And my mum came into my bedroom, handed me a packet of pads and said, "You might need these sewn," and left. That was it.
Like now, like what
Never.
we know now about cycles and how it affects everything, like that's just not enough for a young girl.
I mean, it was kind of lucky. Great. I'm grateful that we had, I think it was called sex education when we were at school, sex education. So you kind of learned about those things at school, but like you never learned about your cycle, which we're going to
No.
do a separate episode on the phases in your cycle. When I learned about that, I was like, why the fuck has no one ever taught me this ever before? And I had to learn it like in my 40s. That would have been so useful. So we're going to do a separate episode.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. That's going to be a good one. Yeah, just the lack of people just didn't talk about anything like that back then. What about you? Like, when did you first hear perimenopause? Was that like via me, or had you heard it before my story started?
No, I had never heard of it before until I listened to that episode that I shared with you that we mentioned the other day. I think we mentioned on the podcast where I shared an episode with you about, and it talks specifically about perimenopause. And I was like, what the hell is perimenopause? Like I'd only ever heard the term menopause.
Yeah.
And the only experience I'd had with menopause was, and I kind of look back now and I was like, oh, that's interesting. My mum had some conversations about like some of the symptoms, but not of menopause, just something that she was going through in her 40s, didn't think that it was menopause at all. And then when she was, I think like early 50s, she was living with me. And I just remember sometimes she'd just be standing like in our dining room, just crying for no reason. She was like, and I was like, what's wrong? She's like, I don't know. I'm just crying. I don't know why. I just feel like crying. And then she would definitely have hot flushes. She would, like need to like go out for fresh air or open a window or something and have those hot flushes and night sweats and stuff. So that was my first and only experience that I had. And that, she was 50, I was 30, something like that. So yeah, that was my only experience.
Not a lot.
It's still not really talked about. She didn't go into detail about it or like say this is what's happening with my periods or like nothing.
Oh, so interesting. Glad we're talking about it more now. Yay for the
Yes.
next generation. They're going to be so inundated with what to expect. They're going to know so much more than we did. So it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into your story, Sam.
Okay.
So when did you start experiencing what we now know were symptoms? What were those symptoms? What were you experiencing? And like, when did that start?
Yeah, I believe it started 4 years ago. So it was, I think, the second lockdown that we were in here in New Zealand during that COVID-y time. I remember just starting to feel just not like myself, kind of lost a bit of enthusiasm for life, lack of energy, weight gain, just feeling just a bit weird and not really sure why. And I initially put it down to lockdown, COVID, tough couple of years that everyone was going through, being trapped at home, trying to fucking homeschool children. That is not my zone of genius. That does not fill me with joy. I love my children, but being stuck with them the 24/7 and trying to be their teacher as well as trying to, grow businesses and everything else was just too much. So I put a lot of it down to just not living a healthy lifestyle and being trapped at home and just not being happy.
This was the start of our relationship at that time too.
It
Interesting.
was. Yeah, it was. Yeah. So yeah, 4 years ago, I would say was probably the first time looking back that I can go, okay, that's when it started. Keeping in mind that 4 years ago, I was what, 41. It hadn't even occurred to me that what I was experiencing had anything to do with menopause because I just assumed you needed to be older to be experiencing all this. Like, you needed to be grey, you needed to have been done having kids, you needed to be in your 50s at least, and I needed to be having hot flushes and my periods need to have stopped, like, or slowed down or something. So
Yeah.
it didn't even occur to me that it was perimenopause 4 years ago. I was too
And so
young.
what was the timeline for did you have your son Angus, your last child? What,
So 8 years, 2016.
2016? And so you would have been 8 years ago, 38, was that right?
Yeah, yeah.
How old
Geriatric
are you now?
mum
Are we doing
having
the math right? How old are you now?
I'm 46.
46.
Yeah.
Okay, so 4 years ago you were 42, and 8 years ago, yeah, you had your son.
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, yes, I was technically a geriatric mum having when I had Angus, but that still didn't lead to okay, yeah. And at no point at any doctor's appointments that I had been to had anyone gone, okay, you're coming up to the age where you might just want to learn about this, just so you're aware. My mum
Well,
didn't say, pull me aside when I hit 40 and go, you know what? This is what I experienced. No one had that conversation with me.
no, and isn't
Why?
it infuriating that we learn now, after we've been learning about this a lot and listening to a lot of podcasts, is that doctors have this tiny mention of menopause in their medical studies, but they don't have any knowledge about perimenopause, or no one trains them on all of these symptoms, and that you don't have to have all the symptoms and all the stuff that we know now, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
No one trains the medical doctors on that.
No, they need to do better in terms of the training. So since the last 4 years, I've done a lot of research. I'm no expert, however, during that kind of this learning phase, that's one of the things that I've learned. I believe, and I think this was from a documentary in the UK that I watched. So this is probably just UK, but I reckon it's probably worldwide. In the UK, GPs are given a day worth of training and education. And I don't even know if that's specifically menopause or if it's just women's reproductive health in general. So it's no more than a day, which is ridiculous given 50% of the fucking population are women and are going to be going through this. Take it more seriously, for fuck's sake.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so 4 years ago, things started to feel a little bit off. Then what started happening with those more really specific symptoms that made you go and be like, okay, there's something actually not right. I need to talk to someone about it.
Yeah, so it took me 2 years to actually go to the doctor about it. So I had 2 years worth of just uncertainty. I thought I was going crazy. Symptoms got progressively worse. I remember having a conversation with you, a few conversations with you actually, going, "Jo, I think I need to go to the doctor. Like when lockdown finishes, I think I need to go to the doctor because I think I'm depressed." Like
That's right.
you remember that? Like, I
Mhm.
don't know what's going on, but this isn't right. I think I might be depressed. Now, I don't have a history of depression. I was having panic attacks. I don't have a history of anxiety or panic attacks. Well, life was hard. I was like rage, and I don't use that word lightly. Like, it wasn't anger, it wasn't frustration, it wasn't a lack of patience, although all of that could have been I could have been described on a daily basis, all of those things. But I was literally having moments of pure rage where in my mind, I was like, violence is the only answer. Like, I literally had this, I'd be having a fight with Mark, and I would literally be thinking, like, I'm holding this plate, I could like throw this at him and I could whack him in the face with it and it would smash. This is not me. Like, this is not right. This is not healthy. Like, what the fuck's going on? But there was one particular ragey moment in particular when I just went, no, I this has got to stop. I need to get help. And that was when I think the we're out of lockdown, the kids were home, and they were just being kids, right? They were being annoying. They'd had a long day at school. I was in the kitchen prepping dinner. They just wouldn't let up. I'd ask them nicely just to like, just give me some space, go outside and make all that noise, whatever. I can't even remember what they were doing, but they just weren't listening. They weren't respecting my space and what my words. And I was prepping dinner, so I had this big sharp knife that I was using to cut, and I just turned around and I screamed at them, and I had this big knife and I just like with all my might slammed it into the wooden chopping block. And I remember seeing the looks on their faces, like they were scared. They were
Yeah, that
scared.
would be terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, "What?"
Oh, Sam,
Yeah.
that is
That
so
was so I think that was within a couple of weeks, I was then at the doctor. But that was 2 years. So that was a 2-year journey. The other really weird thing, like you think you're going crazy in terms of what I did anyway. The brain fog in particular was getting worse and worse and worse. Like we would turn up to a live, you and I'd just be going, fuck, which one's this one? Or something that we'd been talking about like the day before. The next day would come around and I would just be like, what conversation? I couldn't remember names. It was really like I'd lose words.
finding your
I'd lose
words.
a
Yeah.
word. Like
Yeah.
I'd be like, oh God, what's that word, Jo? Like how often did I go, what's that word, Jo? Like, what am I trying to say? Just lose my words. And looking back now, this is weird. Like I actually thought I might have been entering early kind of, what's the word? I've lost a word now.
Dementia or
Dementia, yes,
mm.
because it was happening to such a certain degree. It's like that once again, this isn't normal. Am I going crazy? And it wasn't just words, it was physical actions as well. I remember vividly one day I was sitting at my desk and I couldn't remember how to do a capital letter on my keyboard. I couldn't remember. And I'm looking at the keyboard. I've been typing for how many years? And I was just like, how do you do a capital letter? Like complete blank. And I remember sitting there for like 5 minutes going, which one is it? And I'd be trying different things and it wasn't working. And then finally I turned around to Mark and I was like, how do I do a capital letter on the keyboard? Like, and he just looked at me as if to say, what on earth are you asking
Wow.
me? And the other big thing along the similar lines was we've got a gas hob. And it's the same gas hob that we've had since we've moved into the house. So I'd been using it for years and years and years. And then all of a sudden, I wasn't able to physically turn the gas on. It didn't matter what I do. So Mark would have to be in the house if I wanted the gas on. He would have to be the one to do it and he was like, why aren't you getting this? I said, show me again, show me again. And he'd try and show me and I'd try and do it. But for the life of me, I could not get this gas ignited. And this wasn't just a one-off thing. This was literally I reckon it was for a good 6 months. No matter what I did, no matter what tweaks I tried to make, trying to do this, getting the gas on, I could not do it. And I thought I was going crazy.
Wow, you would. You'd be like, I'm losing my mind. I'm not able to do normal things anymore. Wow, that must have been so scary, Sam.
It was scary. It was really, really scary. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was it. I was like, okay, I've just scared the heebie-jeebies out of my kids. I'm being a horrible partner to Mark. Like, how is he putting up with me? Yeah, so much more. Like, I'm not able to be turning up and be productive at work. Like, I'm not showing up. Like, Joe, you're taking the burden on basically everything because my brain cannot be trusted to hold a fucking thing.
Yeah, there was a lot of reminding you, like, oh, remember you need to do this, or remember you need to do that. A lot more like management of the making sure that things are getting done. Yeah, I definitely remember that. And I also distinctly remember, I don't know what it was about, but I can remember thinking, oh, wow. And this, I love you, Sam, and you love me, and we have a very strong relationship. So anyone hearing this, please know that it's okay. Sam is giving me permission to also say exactly what I was thinking at the time and what had happened. And I remember being on Zoom with you because we do that a couple of times a week. So Mark is often in the background because he works from home as well. And you guys have conversations and we can co-work. And I remember one day he'd come back or come into the room or something and you just ripped into him. And I was like, oh, damn, Sam, you are being such a bitch to your husband right now. Like, this is not okay. But then I'm not going to say anything because, like, when you were in that kind of rage period, I did feel like I had to walk on eggshells and kind of like, oh shit, I have to appease Sam. Never want to like rock the boat or say anything, or I'll just agree with everything she says. And like, I felt like I'd lost my voice for a period.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about that before, because I just didn't know what was going to set you off. And I really wanted to support you and be kind to you and look after you. And yeah, I didn't know what was going on.
No.
At
I'm
all.
so sorry. I have apologized to so many people in
Oh,
my life.
you don't need to
I'm
apologize.
so sorry. And, anyone listening, if you've been in a live with me and I've said something inappropriate or I've got your name wrong over the past few years, or I just haven't seemed like all there or switched on, or a flippant remark has hurt your feelings, because that was another thing. Like,
Yes.
no filter.
Yes,
Like, I'd have periods where I would totally lose my filter. And my filter's not very thick anyway. Like, it's a pretty thin filter. So going from a thin filter to no filter, I've definitely had moments where I've hurt people's feelings. So I'm sorry if that's you and you're listening. And it's really interesting, eh? It's like, I knew all this was going on. Like, I'm relatively self-aware. I feel like I've got a relatively high emotional IQ or an EQ. But it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter how aware of this that you are. It's not something that just fixes itself. It's not something you can snap yourself out of. You can't fucking meditate to make this better. Doesn't matter how much journaling you do. It's not going to help. There is no quick fix for this.
Yeah, it's not like you can just like go and do some mindset work and like just talk yourself out of this and like just change or like change how you think. Like, that is, you are not physically capable or mentally capable of doing that when your hormones are all out of whack and you do not have the estrogen. You do not have the estrogen that you need.
Yeah. I've definitely and we've talked about this as well. I have lost relationships over the past 4 years, and I totally put it down, not completely, but a lot down to what I was going through and my mental health, which, the title of this podcast, it's not just hot flushes. That's the thing, right? You think menopause is your period stopping and you have hot flushes. Like if someone had told me that my mental health was going to be affected to this degree, that my brain capacity, my ability to be a functioning human being was going to be affected to this degree, like that 4 years maybe would have been 6 months. I wouldn't have put everyone around me through such hell. I wouldn't have lost friendships that I've lost. And I think I'm very lucky that you, the type of person that you are, because there are so many other people that would not have put up with me for the amount of time that you did before I was able to even things out. And you've been able to accept me going, I'm so sorry. Like, you've been like, it's all good. There are people around me that haven't been able to. And I don't know if it's because they haven't gone through it themselves yet and they just don't understand, or they haven't got the education, or maybe I even like reaching out and apologizing, wasn't able to do it in a way that I still wasn't communicating well. I'm not sure, but they haven't been able to forgive me, which is heartbreaking. I don't judge them for it. Like, maybe when they go through it themselves, they might reach out back to me and go, hey, I get it now. And if they do, then, I'm totally open to that. But yeah, I've lost friendships, very, very close, long-standing friendships over this.
Yeah. Because you've never had a hot flush to this day, have you?
Nope. I have never had a hot flush.
So, okay, you've got a little notebook that I would love for you to read out of and talk about the symptoms that you were going through at that time that you felt like, right, this is the point that I'm going to go to the doctor. And then I would love to hear about that first doctor's appointment that you had.
Yeah. So I'd had that ragey moment. I decided that no, this was not normal. Even if it's just depression, I need to get it sorted. It's not safe for me. It's not safe for those around me. So I was like, okay, I need to be prepared going in. I need to at least have a list of all the symptoms that I've been experiencing over the past couple of years. So that's what this is basically a list. I wanted to go in knowing, because when you go into the doctors, you forget everything. So having it written down, and especially with me with my brain fog, I knew I was going to miss something. And so I brought it up this morning because I couldn't remember when I had that doctor's appointment. It's like, how long ago was it? So 2 years ago. And it starts off by saying, slowly symptoms have increased until I don't recognize myself anymore.
Oh,
I'm going to cry. And that's so true. Like, I just didn't. Like, who was this person? It was like someone had literally taken over my body and my brain. Should I read out the symptoms?
yeah, absolutely.
Facial hair, at the top of the list. Insomnia. I wasn't sleeping. Gum issues. So my gums had started to bleed and I was gum disease. All of a sudden, like, where the hell does that come from? Hair loss. Like, I literally had bald patches on my head. Brain fog, which we talked about. Low energy. Major mood swings. Outbursts of rage. No patience. Occasional panic attacks. And I've got periods have changed, irregular, and they're either super light or ridiculously heavy. And the day before or the day of, I'm literally in tears all day. I mean, that's not fun.
Not at all. Even just one of those symptoms would be horrible to live with.
Yeah.
Let alone
that's
all of
not
them combined.
Yeah, like I could now add to that list.
Okay, yeah, go for it. What else?
Itchiness. Like, I'd feel like there was something under my skin. Itchy ears. So bizarre. Like, that was another thing. My ears all of a sudden were bothering me. Oh, God. What else? Can't think of any more off the top of my head. But, yeah, there is a list out there. I think the official list has got like about 34 things on it.
34 symptoms. And the
Yeah.
important thing is that even some of the symptoms might be a sign that you're going through perimenopause, and you do
Yeah.
not have to have hot flushes
Yeah.
to be in perimenopause.
Yeah.
Everyone is different.
Yeah. I want to, before we go into the doctor's appointment, because
Mhm.
that's a story on its own, which is an incredible story. I want to talk about the night before. So
Mhm.
I've got a group chat with a couple of friends who are in the VA network. So Alice and Chrissy. And I was like, I'm finally going, they kind of knew what was going on. They would have seen the changes in me too, like you. And it's like, I finally got an appointment. I'm going to the doctor. And I'm either depressed, it's menopause stuff because I'm in my 40s now. I don't know what it is, but I'm going to get it sorted. And Chrissy, bless her fucking heart, Chrissy's younger than us, by the way,
Mhm.
but I think her mum had recently gone on a similar journey. So she knew a little bit about what her mum's perimenopause and menopause experience looked like. And she said, she was just like, Sam, before you walk into that doctor's surgery, you have to watch this documentary.
Oh, I
Thank
am
fuck for Chrissy.
so grateful to her that she did that.
That doctor's appointment would have gone very, very differently
Mhm.
had I not watched that documentary. So anybody listening that hasn't watched this documentary, every woman in the entire world needs to watch this documentary. At the time, I just thought, because remember, my headspace, my mental health, I was not in a good place. And I had no energy. I remember just doing this big sigh and going, you know what, the last fucking thing I want to be doing right now is watching a documentary before I have this first thing in the morning doctor's appointment. I remember just thinking it was the biggest like annoyance. I wasn't going to do it. I was like, oh, thanks, Chrissy. Yep. Thinking, yeah, I'm not going to. Like, who's got time to watch a documentary on this? And I think that I'll bring up what it's called actually, so we can
And
tell
we'll put a
everybody
link
what
in
it
the
is.
show notes as well.
Yeah. So it's a British documentary. Davina McCall is a radio TV personality over there. And so she did this, I think, 2 or 3 part documentary. Watch all of the parts. It's called Sex, Myths, and the Menopause. And I believe I watched it on TVNZ on demand, so it might still even be there. But Sex, Myths, and the Menopause by Davina McCall. So I sat down very reluctantly. Something made me do it because at the time, like looking back now, I've got no idea what did. Because at that point, all I did in my spare time was sleep because I couldn't be bothered doing anything else. It was just escapism, right? So I sat down, thought, fuck it, okay, I'll watch the first 5 minutes, so at least I can say that I did. And it was just mind blowing. It was mind blowing, and the big thing, I got so much out of it. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but the big thing I got out of it, and this is why Chrissy was like, you need to watch it before you have that first doctor's appointment, was that the women that Davina was interviewing, they all had very, very similar experiences, not necessarily in terms of their symptoms, but in terms of that dealing with GPs around getting help. Every single one of them had gone to the doctor going, I don't know what's going on with me. Here are my symptoms. And every single one of them, their doctor said, you are depressed. You need to be on antidepressants. And for most of them, they went, okay, I'm depressed. I'll go on antidepressants. Now, of course, it may have helped like a little bit, like one of their symptoms that they were experiencing, but nothing else. I mean, it's just this weird ass, like lazy band-aid that was being put on people. In all fairness, the GPs, as we talked about before, they didn't have any of the training. They didn't know better. This is what they were taught in their one day in medical school about menopause, was it's depression. So give them an antidepressant and it'll be right.
So criminal.
So guess what happened that next day when I walked in to my GP?
And you listed all those symptoms.
She said, what symptoms? So I listed them out. She said, I swear to God, she goes to me after I listed out all those symptoms. She goes, She had her list to compare it to, right? She goes, okay, right. Now, because you're not having hot flushes, I think you're experiencing depression. So my recommendation would be to get you on some antidepressants. And I just went, in my head, I went, wow, okay, they're right. They're right. This is just the general prescription. This is what all the GP's notes are in their systems when they, a woman of a certain age goes into their clinic. Let's give them antidepressants. And I said to her, I said, I've actually done a little bit of research, and I know that this is something that a lot of GPs suggest. I said, however, I don't want to go down this route. I said, if you believe it is depression, I said, I'm not antidepressants. I said, however, if you genuinely believe that this is what it is, it's depression, then I would much prefer you to refer me to a psychiatrist, a psychologist, whoever it is I need to be referred to, a psychiatrist. Yeah. And then for them to do whatever tests they need to do, like talk to me, and for them to go, yes, it's depression. I said, otherwise, are we actually helping all these other symptoms that I'm experiencing?
And she was a female doctor?
Yes, she's a female doctor. She's, I would say she's in her 30s. Unfortunately, fortunately, I don't know. My previous doctor, who I'd had for 10 years, had just left. She'd just moved out of, not just left the clinic, but left the region. And so this was the first time that I was visiting this particular doctor. So it probably didn't help. All she'd see is this middle-aged, unhealthy, overweight woman basically breaking down in front of her. So in all fairness, I can see why she probably did think it was, depression. And in all fairness, that was one of my symptoms, is depression, right?
Yeah. And she hadn't experienced any of this herself because she had not gone through this yet at her age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for me, like, if you said those symptoms to me now, anyone said those, I'd be like, you're probably in perimenopause. You need to get your hormones checked, or you need to consider like treatment for it.
Yeah.
It's so bloody obvious. You're the prime age for this to happen to. Like, how can the doctor not make that connection?
Well, I mean, that was the other thing that she obviously got wrong. She said, you are, you're quite young. You are quite young.
Oh, what a misconception that this happens when you're 50.
Yep. The other thing is she put it down to my weight as well. So I needed to go get more exercise. I needed to lose weight and go get some exercise. So anyway, she didn't outright then push it. I have to, all credit to her. She was very open to me saying, I've done a bit of research. I'm not comfortable going down that route. I said, I believe it's perimenopause, and I actually I don't want to beat around the bush. I'm at the point now where I've been experiencing the symptoms for far too long. It's got to a point where my children are scared of me, and I don't know how much longer Mark's going to put up with me. Like, he's been pretty patient. I said, I want to go straight to HRT. And her eyes went really, really big. And she swallowed and she went, okay. And then she went straight into the whole link to breast cancer thing. And she immediately pulled out a pamphlet. And it was like, these are the things that you need to be aware about when considering HRT. So it was like I can't even remember how big this pamphlet was. She said, I want you to go away and I want you to read this. And in the car, after I left, like looking through it, it was all very, very negative. It was all, it was all very much, you need to be aware of this and this and this and the connection to this and that and that. Okay. So I basically left that consultation with a pamphlet about why I shouldn't go on HRT and a slip to take me to go get my bloods done, because she wasn't going to, fair enough, she wasn't going to prescribe it until I had basically had a little bit of a health check, just making sure that everything came back clear, that there were no kind of signs that I shouldn't be prescribed it. And I think mainly she was looking at, I think she was worried about my cholesterol because of my weight at the time. Yeah, and a few other, it was mainly weight related things that she was concerned about. She looked at me, and because she didn't know me, she automatically thought that I would have a huge range of underlying health conditions that meant that HRT wasn't going to be for me, which is really interesting. So that's what I did. I went straight to the path lab and got a whole heap of blood taken, and then back the following week to the GP to get my results. So in that time, I went to Mark and I gave him the pamphlet. I said, "This is the direction that I want to go in. I want to go straight on HRT. I don't want to fuck around anymore." I said, "But this affects you. It affects our family. Some of the stuff in the pamphlet is pretty scary. And given my own history with, not my own personal history with cancer, but my birth mother died when she was 45 of cancer. I think it's something that it's a conversation that we need to have, and it's possibly a risk that we do need to be aware of. So I want us to make this decision as a partnership. So if something was to happen and I was to get cancer, there's no blame. There's no I told you so. There's no this. Like, I just want everyone to be on the same page about it." And so he had a look through and he goes, "Like, if this is what you want, then do it. Like, do it."
Wow. Okay. So you go back to the doctor.
I went back to the doctor, and I had literally hadn't even sat down properly in my chair. And she turns to me and looks really, really intently into my eyes. And she said, "I just want to apologize for our last appointment." I was like, "Why?" Like, what the fuck? I have to admit, there was, I had gone back to Mark and saying, like, this first appointment with this doctor, like, textbook, it's exactly what the documentary said. I don't know whether I'm going to go back to her. Like, but in all fairness, I will, because she did listen. She was open. So I'm going to give her another go. I sat down and she apologized for not being educated in perimenopause and menopause. So she had spent that week researching and learning about it. And she said, "Yeah, all that stuff about the connection with cancer that I basically warned you about, it's not valid anymore. And I'm really sorry for trying to put you off going down this route when I hadn't been educated and I didn't know. I was going off what I had been told however many years ago in med school."
Wow.
Yeah.
Good on her
Good. Amazing.
for actually going and doing some research.
Yeah. And she also said, "I've got all your test results. And once again, I'm really sorry for judging you. I expected all of these results to come back telling me how unhealthy you were and how unsuited that you would be for HRT." She said, "Everything's perfect. So if you want to go on HRT, I'm quite willing to give you a prescription today, and we'll do it. We'll start this."
Amazing. Do you know what? The ripple effect from Chrissy giving you unsolicited advice, knowing that it was going to make a big difference, to then you actually having the confidence to go against what the doctor was saying and really pushing her.
Yeah.
And being like, "No, I actually don't want that. Like, please look at this." And her to do the research, and now every time someone with any kind of symptoms comes in, she is not going to immediately give them antidepressants, and so many other women are going to be helped because of that.
Yeah. So
that is incredible.
Because I'm now on, obviously, HRT and have been for 2 years now, I have to go in for more regular checkups than I used to, which is great. And I can't remember how long into it. It might have been 6 months after that first appointment with her. 6 months after that apology, that acknowledgement, I must have gone in and but at this point, like, we get on really well. Like, she's she's so lovely. She's so helpful. And she listens to, like, she trusts that I know my body best, which not all doctors do, right? They think they know better. But so, yeah, I think it was a follow-up appointment, just checking in, probably 6 months on. And she said, it's because of you that I've now got other multiple women that come and see me and now getting the help that they need, and their lives have changed for the better.
Oh,
Yeah, I know.
that's beautiful.
I know. I even had the pharmacist the other day. I was in picking up, just trying the gel instead of the patches, which is another story, which I don't know whether we'll get into. And it's not normally the pharmacist that I deal with, but I've been obviously going in there for 2 years on a regular basis, getting my fucking patches and stuff. And so she came over and she goes, I hope you don't mind, but obviously I've seen you come in and get your prescription, and I'm the one that puts the prescription together, so I know what you take. I'd really be interested to know if you were happy to share with me, like, your journey, because I think I might be experiencing it, and it's really interesting, like, the misinformation, and I'm getting told different things. Like, how did you know? Like, you're quite young. Like, once again, you're quite young. And because I think I do look a little bit younger than my age as well.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
So people are quite surprised to hear that I've been on HRT for 2 years already. So I said, no, I'm more than happy. Like, I will talk about it to anybody. So I had a 10-minute conversation with a bloody pharmacist in her late 30s that was worried about it. It's like, God, if you can help somebody just be more educated to know what to expect and to not be afraid, it's yeah, I'm really proud of that. I am really proud of that.
Yes, you should totally be proud of that. I'm gonna hug Chrissy next time I see her and be like, thank you.
Chrissy,
for sending that video, the documentary.
That doctor's appointment would have gone very, very differently, because there is no way I would have stood up to somebody in the medical profession about something medical. Like, what do I know?
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so when you got the HRT, because there's different types. I think this is important so that others know that there is not just one kind of HRT that you can go on. So what is that? What did that actually look like for you?
Yeah. I'm no expert on all of this whatsoever.
Yeah.
But I had heard that patches were really, really effective. And so it's a great place to start rather than taking it orally. So I knew I didn't want the oral. There was, at the time, gel wasn't really available much here in New Zealand. And it's definitely, the gel isn't funded in New Zealand. You would have to pay for it yourself. So it made sense to do the patches. But they obviously want to start you on a very, very low dose. And then you go in and you get everything checked to see how you're, progressing on it, how you're reacting to it, how you're responding to it. And then if you need to, adjusting it accordingly. So started off on the lowest dose, and it helped, like, don't get me wrong. And pretty much like within the week, I could see, like, I was still experiencing all of those symptoms. Nothing completely went away, but everything was just down a notch. You know what I mean? So I wasn't having the rage. The anger was still there, but it wasn't rage. So, and I still wasn't sleeping great, but I was sleeping a little bit better than I was. So everything was still there. It was just, like, slightly better. And so I think I had to go back I can't remember if it was a month or 3 months later. I think it was a month. And I was like, no, it's not enough. Like, I know it's working, but I also know it's not enough. So she then doubled the dose, and that helped considerably. Once again, it dropped all of the symptoms a little bit more, but I was like, oh, no, I need it more again. So next appointment, she put me up again. within 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, I was on the highest dose you can get. So it doesn't get any higher than what I'm on. But my symptoms pretty much gone. Like I would I don't, I mean, I don't know. You be the judge. Like in terms of the
Oh,
Sam that you saw 2 years ago, would you say that?
yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, and, it's because you now have the estrogen, the hormones to be able to cope with things and to deal with things and
Yeah.
to not have those symptoms, which
Yeah.
is amazing. Yeah, you are a different person than you were back those
Yeah.
2 years ago, for
Yeah.
sure.
So yeah, I was never afraid of the dose.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I don't like I'm proud. I'm on the highest dose. That is
mm,
nothing to be ashamed of. If it is helping me, why
yeah,
wouldn't I be on that level? It's not doing me any harm. It's
mm,
doing me so much good. But yeah, it was a journey to get there. There was that kind of reluctance. I think my only concern around being on the highest dose is the fact that this menopause journey, for some women, it can last 10 years,
mm,
from 35 to 45, 45 to 50. It could be longer, right? Could even be longer than that. But from what I understand, I don't know whether this is still accurate, but the GP had told me that you can only be on it for 10 years
mm,
before. I don't know what happens at that 10-year point, but they only like you to be on it for 10 years. So
mm,
I think that was one of the reasons, given my age, not wanting to start too early, if
mm.
then I'm still experiencing like a lot of the symptoms in 10 years' time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting. I think now that more people are talking about it, and now that they have a lot more women on HRT, they can do a lot more studies to figure out like actually what happens and what people need and how to deal with HRT.
Yeah. I mean,
Mm.
it's crazy hearing all of these stories about it's only now that a lot of the medical testing and research that is done for everything in life,
Mhm.
it's only been done on men because women
Yeah.
have been too hard because of our
Yeah.
hormones. It's just like, hello?
Hormones, time in your cycle, kids, other responsibilities, yeah, taking time off to do the study, yeah, all
Yeah.
sorts of complications to do
Yeah.
it with women.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think anybody that is thinking about going down this route who is scared about being on a higher dose, like obviously this is not medical advice whatsoever, going off my own experience, like don't be afraid to go higher. Like you don't have to put up with the symptoms. Like
Mm.
your symptoms can pretty much go to zero if you are on the right dose. So don't be afraid to ask to go up,
Yeah.
because when I was still on the lowest and even the medium, I was still experiencing, and not this wasn't every day at this point, but I would literally, for no reason, or something would trigger me, but they didn't have to. Sometimes it could just be I'd wake up feeling really, really sad and very, very teary, and everything would feel really, really hard. And I would be in tears, and Mark would come in. I'd be on this edge of our bed, just like, this is too much. Like, I just think that you would be better off without me. Like, I feel like everybody around me would be better off without me. So that was while I had started HRT and I was still having days like that,
Yeah.
which is why I
Yeah.
knew I had to go up.
Well, there is a stat that the time in a woman's life where they are most likely to have a marriage breakup or commit suicide is between 45 and 55. And this is why.
Yeah.
Because people are not getting the help that can actually help them not feel that way.
Yeah.
Because that happened for you, didn't the suicidal thoughts?
Yeah.
Like, let's have a chat about that. Because,
Yeah.
like, this literally saved your life
It literally did. If I
and your
hadn't have,
marriage.
yeah, and yes, if I hadn't have done what I did to fix things, to get things back on an even keel, I do believe that those, because it was like, let's not sugarcoat it. That's a suicidal thought, 100%. when you think the world and everyone close to you would be better off without you, and you're literally going, okay, right, well, how could I do it in a way that I'm not going to scar anyone any more than they already are?
Oh,
Like,
man.
yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible, and I'm going to cry thinking about it because it wasn't me. It wasn't
No,
me.
you're the most bubbly, like, a people person ever.
Yeah. But I mean, the number of times that you talked me out of, not necessarily that low, but other moments where I would literally go, everyone hates me, Joe.
Mhm.
Do you remember those conversations?
I do.
Everyone hates me. Yeah. Or I'd go, this person, I'd read out a text or a message to you and go, they're pulling away. They don't like me anymore. I felt as though that everyone just hated me. I
Mm.
literally thought that everyone hated me.
Oh, yeah, that is rough. It literally saved your life. I'm so pleased that you got the help that you need. Do you know what I find unbelievable is that at any time, I think this is true, at any time, no one ever said, let's test your hormone levels.
They still haven't. I still haven't had my hormone levels tested.
Because would that not show your estrogen so low and then physically be black and white? This is why you're experiencing all of these things. You don't have the estrogen to cope with life.
I don't know. Yeah, it's not something I've actually ever looked into. I think because I was so certain that this is what it was. Like, I just knew at this point.
I mean, it is. We know that without the result.
Yeah.
But why did the doctor never suggest that?
Is it something that they do here? Maybe it's not funded. I don't know. Maybe it's inconclusive. Maybe it was just her education at the time. Maybe if I was to ask her now, she would have a very different answer. Like, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. I am so grateful that I have the real Sam back. And I know that everyone else around you and in your family is grateful too. Okay, we have some women who will be listening that are in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, 50s, 60s. What would you say to those who are under 40? And what would you say to those who are over 40 who haven't had their period stop and have gone through menopause?
I would tell them. So the first one, so the kind of think you're too young.
40, yeah.
You know, you got this misconception that's hot flushes and you're old and grey. Yeah, everyone is going to experience it differently, but it is going to happen to you. So just educate yourself. Just be aware of the symptoms. Know your body. But go into this time of life, which is coming up, educated and aware of it more. Just so you know what to expect, so you don't start questioning your sanity. Or for those that are already possibly experiencing some of those symptoms, like Google it. Google perimenopause. Go watch that documentary, the Davina McCall documentary. So when you go into that first appointment, once again, you are more educated. But also know that you don't have to put up with these symptoms. That kind of, I feel like there's this, and maybe it comes from the older generation, that, oh, well, we all go through it and it's just part of it. It's just part of getting older as a woman. So what you've got to put up with, like, I was not living life. I was willing, before obviously all of the cancer link myths were put to bed finally for me, I was willing to risk getting cancer because I didn't know better, because I wasn't living anyway. I was miserable and everyone around me was miserable. That's not life. That's not living. You don't have to put up with it. Just because our mothers and our grandmothers perhaps put up with it doesn't mean that we have to put up with it. Like, we deserve better. We deserve more.
Yeah.
That would be my message. educate yourself and just know you don't have to fucking put up with it. And you're not
You know,
going crazy. You are
yeah, not
not going
crazy.
crazy.
And I think those who are, who are younger, to also notice those around them who, from 35, 40s, if you start seeing these things in them, like help educate them, show them the documentary, talk to them about it, ask them how they're doing so that you can support those women. And I really thought about this once I learned all of this. I was like, wow, I have some team members who are in their 40s.
Yes.
I wonder who is going through this silently and not saying anything that I could now actually support. So this has actually reminded me that I want to have a session with the
Yeah.
team, specifically talking about perimenopause and the symptoms, and talk about your experience and what they need to look out for, and to actually say something if they are struggling.
I mean, it's such a good point, right? We touched on it a little bit in last week's episode with Tanya, who talked about how she actually lost a client going through this point in her own journey because of the brain fog and everything else. Like, and there'll be women in traditional 9-to-5s that will have been fired, or they've had to resign because they haven't been coping anymore. Like, I wouldn't have. There's no way I would still be in a 9-to-5 with what I was. No one would have put up with that shit. No one.
No one would put up with you not being able to do a capital letter for 5 minutes on a keyboard. Like if you just actually can't do your work anymore, there are organizations that just won't be okay with it if they don't understand what's happening to you and you don't understand what's happening to you.
I also think it's really important. So as like leaders and as business owners to know to plan for this, right? But also like the males in our lives. Like, maybe I've tried not to inundate Mark, but there's been certain like podcasts, and I made him sit down and rewatch one of the part of the documentaries as well. Like things, but especially that particular episode, that podcast episode that you sent to Tisha and I, and you sent it to us, I think mainly for the gut health. I think that was probably mainly the reason you sent it to us. But that was the part of that interview that had me in tears, was when Dr. Mandy Pels.
Mindy Pels.
Mindy Pels was talking about the suicide rate and divorce rate in women, and how that is no coincidence. It is not a coincidence. And I remember it was just tears of relief, and just somebody officially going, you know what, like, Sam, you were close. You were close to both of that. Like, so I definitely sent that to Mark. As you know, we've had the apologies and stuff, and I've told him how grateful that I am for him being so patient, because I am genuinely. But also, it's really important, getting back to my point, is for the males around us, and not just our partners, but our dads, if they're still around, and our sons and brothers. Like, it touches them all. Like, even if sons and brothers, for instance, aren't affected by us personally, they're going to have a partner that goes through it at some point. And don't you want them to be educated to know that this is going to happen? So if you can get through it, like, have that patience, know that there is a fix for it, that it's not going to last forever. Be aware of the symptoms, of like the mental health symptoms, not just the physical symptoms. I mean, it can change so many relationships for the better, and so many women's lives for the better, if the men are educated as well as us.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you for once again going way behind the scenes of your life and sharing so much. And I think it's so important, because I know even if it helps one woman save their marriage or save their life, it is so worth it that you were that vulnerable and shared that. So thank you so much. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Sam and Joe VA Show. If you'd like to find out more, head to the VA Foundry website to check out the mastermind and the amazing resources, courses, and coaching.
You can find us at thevafoundry.com.